Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 172 based on novel. So let's start. Suddenly, rocks flew in all directions. Pangong so rushed into the sky both embarrassed and angry, and threw a huge cauldron above himself. It hung in midair with the mouth facing down, and instantly, sand, rocks, broken pillars, crumbling fences, and dilapidated walls were all sucked in by it. The huge cauldron was like a pot of boiling soup, which actually drew fire. There might not be much of it. True fire was like an extremely terrifying boiling sea. Anything that entered the cauldron would be burned to ashes. This meant that it wasn't a weapon that Pangong so could have created just then. The huge cauldron had to have been forged in one of his previous lives. It was extremely strong since it was a cult legacy treasure forged by an existence close to the god realm. However, due to his low cultivation, Pangong so couldn't unleash its complete power. There were strong and weak spirit weapons, and they were classified according to realms. If one came in possession of a high-quality sword, it didn't mean that their power could multiple. It still depended on how much power could be brought out. For example, Qin Mu's carefree sword was a divine sword with astonishing power. But for the time being, Qin Mu couldn't unleash the power of the divine sword. He could only make use of its sharpness. Pangong so was the same as well. With his current realm, he couldn't unleash the power of the spirit weapons he had crafted in his previous lifetimes. Even so, with the standard of being at the peak of 7 stars realm, he could unleash 10% or so of the huge cauldron. Sand flew up in the ruin while more walls, pillars, and broken palace hall pieces got broken apart by the suction force and rose toward the cauldron. The entire ruin was continuously disintegrating and rising into the sky. Qin brat, now you know how powerful am I, right? Abilities don't rely just on cultivation. Pangong so flipped over and landed on the huge cauldron with a sneer. So what if your cultivation is much denser than mine? My treasure is better than yours, so I can just smack you with it and have you die miserably. When he looked down though, he was stunned. He saw Qin Mu standing under the cauldron and not moving. No matter how hard the suction force tried to pull him in, his body didn't lift up an inch. How is that possible? Pangong so stared with his eyes wide open until he realized that Qin Mu was holding onto a metal ball that was the size of a tangerine. That circular ball suddenly moved and flowed like water or sand. Sword pellet. Pangong so instantly understood why the huge cauldron couldn't suck in Qin Mu. The weight of his sword pellet had to be extremely great, weighing him down so much that even the cauldron he had forged in his previous life couldn't lift it up. Isn't his sword pellet only 2 feet long? If I can't capture you, I'll just have to kill you. Pangong so suddenly dived down. When he smacked his palms against the huge cauldron, a clank rang out, and a sea of fire spewed out. Wherever it passed, everything was melted. Sand and stone were turned into boiling lava throughout the whole of the ruins. Qin Mu caught the sword pellet. Countless fine flying swords came flying out, and with Carefree Sword as the master, they merged together. With both hands on the sword, Qin Mu split apart the sea of fire that was pouncing at him. Wherever his sword passed, the fire would instantly be extinguished. The 2 sides of the desert were melting from the heat, but the place where the power of the sword had brushed by was still covered in red sand. The corners of Qin Mu's eyes twitched. True fire was incomparably fierce, and its power was extremely strong. He didn't know what kind of evil fire it was. Pangong so shouted loudly, and an abnormal change happened to his corporeal body. Wings grew out from his axilla, and his legs turned into talons. Flames poured down to protect his body from the cauldron above him. His wings were golden, and the feathers clanged when they collided against one another as his wings opened up. The gold feathers shot toward Qin Mu when his wings vibrated. With wind and thunder, sword-like feathers sliced through the air as though a storm was raging. Qin Mu's hands crisscrossed, and carefree sword instantly split into pieces, transforming into 8,000 flying swords that danced like a long river. The vast and mighty sword river rushed toward Pan Gong Tso. Pan Gong Tso was unstable in the air when he attacked. His sword feathers flew to welcome the sword river, and crisp sounds of collision rang out endlessly. After the clash, Pan Gong Tso cried out in alarm, as he stood naked with broken sword feathers all over the floor. His feathers were all severed by Qin Mu, and only 2 naked wings flapped at his sides. The flames which had gone down to protect him from his huge cauldron were pretty famous, and were called Blazing Divine Fire Shroud. Its defensive power was astonishing, and could continuously shift the enemy's attacks toward the huge cauldron. Furthermore, the power of Blazing Divine Fire was also astonishing. Any weak spirit weapons would be turned into ashes. Yet Qin Mu just broke Blazing Divine Fire Shroud and even severed all of his feathers. This guy can even break my Blazing Divine Fire, so is indeed slightly stronger than me. I'm not his match. Once Pan Gong Tso realized that, he didn't hesitate and leaped upwards. He picked the huge cauldron, pushing it to the ground, and chose escaped through there. But before he could tunnel into the sand, Qin Mu caught the leg of the cauldron and lifted it up with a smile. Grandmaster, where are you going? Pan Gong Tso transformed into a black light to flee over the sand. Qin Mu threw away the huge cauldron, and his body also suddenly changed into that of a shadow to move through the ground. After a moment, sand filled the air as the 2 of them broke out 3,000 yards away. Pan Gong Tso took 2 frantic steps as feathers fell into place after growing out on his body once more. He then flapped his wing to soar into the sky. Competing at speed with me. Qin Mu executed heaven-pilfering divine legs, and he didn't need to use any spells or divine arts to step into the air. A human and bird chased after each other in mid-air. After a moment, the huge bird got beaten into a naked chicken and fell from the sky. Before Pan Gong Tso could land on the ground, an elephant's trumpet sounded out from his mouth. The muscles on his head and face grew crazily while his neck cracked, and 2 more heads grew out, turning him into a 3-headed god statue that had elephants' heads. His corporeal body swelled up and reached the height of 20 yards. With boundless strength, he swung a punch straight at Qin Mu, who was chasing him. With his 3 heads, he shouted, "Qin brat, die." Boom. Their fists collided, and the force of corporeal body divine arts exploded. Blade-like whirlwind burst forth around them and swept up sand and stones into the air. The 3-headed elephant man coughed up blood, and his body flew backward. Qin Mu chased after, but before he could reach Pan Gong Tso, he saw him shaking to return to his original form. Pan Gong Tso leaped into the air then, and a lotus bloomed beneath him. It was about 3 yards big. Pan Gong Tso jumped into it, and Qin Mu saw that lotus close its petals before vanishing with the person inside. Qin Mu was astonished. Teleportation method. Doesn't look like it. Just as he thought that, a lotus suddenly popped out from the desert over a dozen miles away, and bloomed quietly. Qin Mu hurried over with his vital qi bursting forth. With a flick, his sword pellet swooshed forward. As his finger swirled rapidly, his sword pellet in front of him broke apart, and 8,000 flying swords transformed into a powerful current, which rushed forward crazily, reaching the lotus a step earlier than him. Spiral sword form. The speed of the sword light was extremely fast, even faster than Qin Mu sprinting at his full speed. It reached the lotus in an instant. The lotus bloomed and Pan Gong Tso leaped out from the flower. He took out a piece of black cloth in a hurry, then after shaking it in the wind, he jumped into the cloth. Countless flying swords shredded the lotus into pieces, and drowned out the black cloth. But even though it was shredded to pieces, Pan Gong Tso had vanished once more. Qin Mu landed on the ground and looked around. Above his head, 8,000 swords had lined up in a circle with their tips pointing outwards. No matter in which direction Pan Gong Tso came out, he would receive the fiercest attack. Yet the desert was calm. After Pan Gong Tso went into the cloth, he seemed to have vanished from the world. Far away, a sandstorm raged. Sunship and countless sand dragons hid among flashes of lightning and booms of thunder in it. The black sun was flung with world-shaking power through the sandstorm from time to time. The energy waves from it even reached Qin Mu from time to time, and formed tornadoes, which swept red sand into the sky. It was hard to see far. In front of the sandstorm was Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's tiny figure. But Qin Mu paid no attention to the battle over there. He suddenly gave a heavy stomp on the ground, and the desert trembled. Small whirlwinds swept up the sand to form a sand giant, which was 4 to 5 feet tall. Qin Mu had also learned 10,000 spirit nature technique, but he wasn't as skilled as the disciples of True Heaven Palace. "Where is Pan Gong Tso hiding?" he asked. The delicate sand giant raised its hand to point. Qin Mu looked in that direction, but he didn't see anything. Cinnabar Heaven's eyes. Formation markings swirled in his eyes, and when he looked over again, he was slightly stunned. He could see an insignificant straight line in the air traveling with the wind at a speed that wasn't too fast. The surrounding wind and sand were very strong, but that fine line didn't bend at all. It was slightly strange. Qin Mu increased his speed and came to that fine line. He saw that it wasn't a line, but a mirror that was so thin that it had no thickness. It was about as high as a human. Pan Gong Tso had used phantom illusion technique of great educational heavenly devil scripture to transform into a black shadow to enter that mirror. Qin Mu was flabbergasted. He grabbed a flying sword to stab at the mirror while praising, "Grandmaster, it's no wonder you could survive until now." Pan Gong Tso saw him, and his expression changed tremendously. He threw out a rope from the mirror and climbed out with its help. Qin Mu's sword pierced through the mirror, shattering it into pieces. However, Pan Gong Tso had already climbed out with the rope and had vanished. What divine art is this? Qin Mu examined the surroundings with his Cinnabar Heaven's eyes, but couldn't find any traces of Pan Gong Tso. Suddenly, his heart shook, and he picked up a fragment of the mirror and moved it around. He then once again found Pan Gong Tso. He saw Pan Gong Tso had already climbed up to mid-air. The end of his rope had a hook which had been caught on a cloud. From the looks of it, Pan Gong Tso seemed to be planning on hiding in the cloud. Yet what was weird was that he and the rope seemed to be invisible and hidden in a strange space in the mirror, which was somehow overlapping with the real world. The rope could hang in the space of the real world, but even Cinnabar Heaven's eyes couldn't see it. Grandmaster has truly become proficient in escaping for his life, Qin Mu exclaimed. He held the mirror in one hand while flicking his finger with another. Carefree sword flew out and rushed into the sky, slicing the invisible rope under the white cloud. Qin Mu grabbed another mirror and threw it out, right where Pan Gong Tso was falling. With a thump, he landed in it, and when he raised his head, he saw Qin Mu who was outside the mirror. Grandmaster, can we talk now? Qin Mu grabbed the mirror up with a smile. Pan Gong Tso stood in the center of the mirror. He saw all the broken surfaces and the shattered pieces, which were like broken up transparent land with an impassable distance between each part of it. His mirror was an unusual treasure, which he had received from great ruins. The world inside the mirror could overlap with the real world, and no one would discover it. The only flaw was that he couldn't use any divine arts while inside. In the past, Pan Gong Tso had always used this treasure as a tool for escaping, so he had never expected that a day would come when he would end up trapped in the mirror. It was no longer possible for him to escape. Qin Mu had severed his rope, so the only way out was to jump out of the mirror, but if he attempted that, he would be pierced through the heart where he stood. Cult Master Qin was not here to kill me, but to have a talk. Pan Gong-so gave up on the idea of escape and probed, "Why didn't you say so earlier?" Qin Mu looked at Pan Gong-so in the mirror, and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "When did I have the chance? The moment you saw me, you wanted to act tough and even kill me, so I could only retaliate. Actually, when we met just now, didn't I say a friend from afar came to see you, and isn't that a joy? You should have known I had come to reminiscence about the past with you and not to kill you. So what was all this for?" Pan Gong-so nearly vomited blood. The rascal had clearly said a friend from afar came to see you, so why aren't you coming out to die? When did he say isn't that a joy? However, now wasn't the time to argue about word choices. Since his life had landed in the brat's hands, it was best to follow his wishes. Cult Master Qin is noble, benevolent, and broad-minded, which I have always admired. This little brother was just joking with you earlier. I just wanted to see Cult Master's skill and power. You are indeed extraordinary. I'm completely won over. Pan Gong-so wiped away the blood dripping from the corners of his mouth, and sat down with a smile. For Cult Master to travel so far here, I wonder what you want to discuss. That god behind your back. Qin Mu raised the mirror with a face full of smiles. Imperial Preceptor, and I would like to meet him, and pay our respects to this sacred predecessor. I wonder if Grandmaster would give us the chance. Pan Gong-so's face changed slightly. The god behind his back was none other than the god which appeared when he executed his shaman spell of paying respect to the soul. Qin Mu asking him the location of that god was definitely not to pay respect to him. He was preparing to gather power to get rid of that god. Cult Master Qin, Human Emperor Qin, how would I know such an existence? Pan Gong-so immediately laughed. You know what my abilities are like. Such a measly existence like me, Cult Master can beat two with one hand, so how could I know any god? As for his location, that's something a weakling like me wouldn't be able to know. Cult Master, think please. Qin Mu held up the mirror, and stabbed around in the sand with his sword. He said nonchalantly, Grandmaster says he doesn't know any gods, but that's obviously a lie. If you didn't know any gods, how could you invite people of high heavens to deal with me? How could you lure Shu Xinghe out? If you didn't know any gods, how would you recognize true heaven old mother? Grandmaster, you and I are not kids, so let's not beat around the bush. You indeed don't have the right to know any gods, but the person behind you does, and you should be very close to him. The god apparition that appears behind your back when you pay your respects, that god should be your master or grandmaster, right? Pan Gong-so looked at the sword with which he was stabbing the sand, and his face flickered between clear and dark. Suddenly, he stood up and paced to and fro in the mirror, as he made a difficult decision. Everyone said he was the founder of Roland's Golden Palace, but they didn't know that there was someone else involved in it. Back then, when that god with whom Pan Gong-so had a deep connection, founded Roland's Golden Palace, it was by chance that it had landed in his hands. There were many disgraceful events in the past. He's my master. Pan Gong-so stopped and raised his head to look at Qin Mu, who was outside the mirror. Your guess is right. The reason why I have connections with high heavens and was able to recognize true heaven old mother is indeed because of him. However, I would advise you not to provoke him, he's too evil. The corners of his eyes trembled violently as he said in a low voice, Cult Master should know that I'm considered evil, but compared to him, I pale into insignificance. I'm his disciple, but every time I execute the soul worship shaman spell, I need to borrow his power. You know that, right? Every time I use that shaman spell, I have to lose quite some lifespan. He, If he's treating even his disciple like this, what about others? This is why I wasn't willing to use this kind of shaman divine art. Qin Mu's expression couldn't help changing. Pan Gong Tso would actually say someone was evil. This was truly a fantasy story, which no one could believe. In terms of evil in this world, who could be above Pan Gong Tso, who had poisoned the entire prairie and killed countless of innocent herdsmen? I also don't know his true name. I only know what he goes by, Pan Gong Tso said. Other people call him Shaman God Kuei. I think his surname should be Kuei, but people of our lineage rarely reveal their true names and surnames, so his surname might not be real either. Shaman God Kuei. Qin Mu was stunned. Kuei was indeed a surname, but the Kuei of Shaman God Kuei could also not be a surname. Kuei by itself could mean ear or ghost. Could it then be not a surname, but the name of a race? If that was the case, Shaman God Kuei should be a ghost. However, it's quite impossible for Cult Master to find him, Pan Gong Tso said. He came from another world and left early in my first lifetime. Qin Mu carefully examined Pan Gong Tso's face in the mirror, but the other didn't look like he was faking it. Cult Master Qin, there's no need to doubt me. There's no need for me to lie to you. I'm now in your hands and my life and death is within your grasp. I won't gain anything by lying to you. Qin Mu pondered it for a moment and smiled. Grandmaster, you are lying to me again. When did I lie to you? Pan Gong Tso asked helplessly. If he really left, why can you still execute the soul worship shaman spell? That apparition behind you, isn't it the apparition of his primordial spirit? Qin Mu smiled. Do you think I'll believe he has the ability to project his primordial spirit from another world? If he had this ability, the gods in the upper bound wouldn't need to go through so much by first sending their petrified corporeal bodies with orders for the gods of high heavens to activate the world-shattering divine artifacts. Pan Gong Tso's expression instantly changed. Qin Mu looked at the youth that was even younger than him and said leisurely, besides, he can also sense your summons and project his apparition over to help you kill others by paying respect to them. I don't think a god would be that free, and I don't think a soul worship shaman spell would be executed like this. What if one day he was in a bad mood and decided not to project his apparition? Wouldn't you be harmed by him then? Grandmaster, we are all smart people, so tell me a truth and I'll let you live. Pan Gong Tso's expression flickered. He suddenly laughed out loudly and clapped his hands. As expected of Cult Master Qin, the man who I view as my nemesis. It's not easy to trick you. That's right, he didn't leave. He planned to leave, but I schemed against him and severely injured him before taking away his primordial spirit. Qin Mu stared at him with his eyes wide open in astonishment. Pan Gong Tso's smile was full of pride. As the teacher, so the pupil. Whatever he taught me, I learned it all and even surpassed him. Yet that old thing never imparted the method of becoming a god to me. At that time, I was already old and about to die in a few years, but he never thought of our relationship as that of master and disciple. HMPH, since he wanted me to die, I chose for him to die first. So when he was finally ready to leave this world and the upper bound projected a divine ray to receive him, I made my move. Chill rose in Qin Mu's heart. Pan Gong Tso smiled and said, I used the divine art he taught me to disrupt the receiving divine ray, splitting it into two. Cult Master Qi, you are proficient in teleportation divine art. So when your teleportation divine art gets split into two, what will your end be like? Qin Mu's heart thunked against his ribcage. I will also split into two. Receiving divine ray is no different from teleportation divine art, with the only difference being in the separation of the corporeal body and the primordial spirit. Pan Gong Tso was immensely pleased with himself as he talked leisurely. I used shaman spells to sacrifice my disciple, and split the receiving divine ray into two. The corporeal body and primordial spirit of my master, shaman god Kuei, instantly separated and fell from the receiving divine light. It was killing two birds with one stone. My disciple had long anticipated my death, so he could take over my position, so I got rid of them both at the same time. Without a corporeal body, shaman god Kuei's primordial spirit was easy to control when I planted a soul bug in him. Qin Mu felt his hair stand on ends, and he sighed. Grandmaster, you said shaman god Kuei is evil, but in my eyes, he might not be as evil as you. Pan Gong Tso shook his head. You are overestimating me. I can't compare to him. He is the true evil. Even after having been trapped for so long, his corporeal body hasn't died yet, and his primordial spirit is also fine. It even nearly broke through my seal a few times, after I made use of it to found soul worship shaman spell. Cult master didn't expect it, right? In my first lifetime, I was one of the top existences in this world, a strong practitioner that was close to God level. Maybe I had reincarnated too many times, and my wish to improve has been worn down, but my demeanor back then wasn't any inferior to that of cult master Qin. Qin Mu nodded. That is true. Grandmaster's abilities are extraordinary. Even though you learned the techniques of the other sects and sacred grounds, your shaman spells are your strongest skills. They were accumulated from your first lifetime, and other techniques that you learned in your successive lifetimes are just decorating what's already perfect. They are of little use to you. If you had focused on researching your shaman spells, your achievements today would not be what they are now. Pan Gong Tso's expression grew bleak and his voice dim. So what if I could cultivate my shaman spells to however strong they could get? I still couldn't become a god. After realizing this, I started to walk other paths, trying to find the path to become a god in other sacred grounds and sects. What a pity that they also didn't have it, or even fully comprehended what I had learned in my lifetimes. In the end, it was Cult Master Qin, the man who I view as my greatest enemy, that spread the method of becoming a god to the public, giving me hope to finally reach that stage. You really make me sigh endlessly, not knowing what to say. He fell into a daze, then suddenly said, if I had met you in my first lifetime, we might not have been enemies. We might even have been friends. Qin Mu blushed and laughed. Grandmaster, don't joke around, I ain't evil at all. Where did you hide shaman god Kuei's corporeal body, and where did you suppress his primordial spirit? If I tell you, will you not kill me and let me go that way? I can make an oath to earth count. Qin Mu said firmly. Pan Gong Tso shook his head. Cult master, don't joke around. Qin Mu laughed loudly and waved his hand. If you don't want to make an oath to earth count, then let us make an oath to shaman god Kuei's primordial spirit. If you go against the oath and give me a fake location, you will die suddenly when you meet him. It will be the same for me, if I don't let you go. I will die immediately when I meet him. Pan Gong Tso muttered to himself irresolutely. Qin Mu's suggestion was indeed sincere, but also very scheming. If Pan Gong Tso went against the oath, it would be equivalent to making his soul worship shaman spell useless. If he executed it, he would die immediately. When that art turned useless, his abilities would no longer be that terrifying. His divine art would also become extinct, and no one would be able to use it again. Pan Gong Tso's threat level and existence would be enormously lowered. In fact, the reason why Qin Mu could be a match for Pan Gong Tso, and was able to beat him up miserably, was because the soul worship shaman spell didn't work on him. If he was faced with anyone else, even if they were a realm or two higher than him, they would still die under his art. There was no other end result. Only Qin Mu, whose name was fake, could withstand Pan Gong Tso's strongest attack, forcing the other to fight him normally. All right. Pan Gong said without hesitation. Let's make an oath to shaman god Kuei. He immediately executed soul worship shaman spell, and an altar appeared behind him. On it was shaman god Kuei's apparition. The two immediately made an oath to shaman god Kuei, and each analyzed the other's oath to see if there were any flaws. They instantly discovered that they were very clever, and there weren't many flaws left, and the few that remained were traps. This old little fox, the two of them cursed silently in their hearts. Pan Gong Tso let out a shaky breath and said, I hid shaman god Kuei's corporeal body in Yang Mountain in the southernmost side of Great Ruins. His primordial spirit is suppressed at the northernmost side of Yin Mountain. If you go to those two places, you'll find him. He raised his head to look at Qin Mu outside the mirror. Cult Master Qin, you should fulfill your promise. You should have laid down some seal, right? Why don't you talk about it? Pan Gong Tso smiled at him in a way that wasn't really cheerful. Cult Master, the oath between us did not mention this. What's more, even if I say, would you believe me? Qin Mu yawned, still full of smiles. I don't dare to believe. But me saying that I won't kill you does not mean that Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor won't kill you. Pan Gong Tso laughed loudly and suddenly transformed into a black shadow that tunneled out from the mirror and returned to his natural form. He smiled and said, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor is in battle with True Heaven Old Mother, and the two of them are currently at the most important stage. Their abilities are on par with each other and victory is hard to determine. He walked 2 rounds around Qin Mu, then suddenly attacked him while chuckling. Cult Master Qin, the oath between us was that you let me go and don't kill me, but the oath didn't say I can't take this chance to attack you. Qin Mu's expression suddenly changed, and he quickly moved back. Pan Gong Tso attacked frantically while laughing loudly. His moves and forms were all executed to his heart's content, and the humiliation he'd felt before vanished. Qin Mu found it difficult to defend. The difference between them wasn't big, so if Pan Gong Tso continued attacking and he continued to defend, Pan Gong Tso would gain the upper hand and the advantage would keep increasing. In the end, Qin Mu would probably die under his hand. Grandmaster. Qin Mu suddenly pulled out his sword and retaliated with a smile. My oath said not to kill you, but it doesn't mean that I can't sever an arm or a few legs. Don't worry, little brother, I am proficient in the art of healing, so even if I cut off your head, I can ensure you will survive. At most I will connect your head to the body of a pig. Pan Gong Tso almost got his arm sliced off and immediately fell back, anger rushing to his heart. You bastard! You bastard! Qin Mu was also furious. Didn't you also hide your plans, waiting to scheme against me? Pan Gong Tso dodged here and there in a hurry, then patted his Dao Tai sack, and a sword case flew out. Flying swords soared into the sky and transformed into the 6th writing of Dao Sword. 7 unusual-looking golden lotuses, fondness of the generous Qing dynasty. This was the 7 stars realm's sword skill of Dao sect's Dao Sword. The swords flew into 7 stars, and they transformed into lotuses, which harbored the 5 elements, and accepted the sun and the moon. This art had strangely great power. Qin Mu shouted and used the 6th writing of Dao Sword. The 2 sword skills collided, and Pan Gong Tso flew backward. He suddenly tunneled into the ground, and Qin Mu rushed forward while shouting loudly, Fatty dragon, I will injure him and you kill him. After saying that, he tunneled into the ground as well. Far away, the dragon Qilin had always been watching without coming close. When he heard Qin Mu's order, he rushed over in a panic. Just as he came to where Qin Mu and Pan Gong Tso had vanished, the desert exploded 10 miles away, as 2 figures rushed into the sky. Just as the dragon Qilin hurried over, the 2 of them flashed with teleportation runes and vanished. When the both of them reappeared, they were over 10 miles away once more. Sword lights clanked as they collided. These two fellows who are both proficient in escaping for their lives, so how can I catch up to them? The dragon Qin grumbled. This video will end here.